Are social justice warriors ruining Star Wars? Now, this is a theory, this weird thread that's going around, and it started with this. Let's look at the graphic. It's the Rotten Tomato meter versus the audience score. Now, if you look at the top critics, 93% of all critics approve of this film. That is the percentage of critics who like the film, 93%. And then the audience score, however, is 54%. Now, this happens a lot, but usually not with giant blockbuster films. Usually, for giant blockbusters, the critics hate it, and the audience is like, it's not that bad. So folks started looking around to see why this might be, and certain people have kind of glommed on to a message that says that essentially social justice warriors are ruining the film. We'll go with the first quote here, that is, the comments are littered with 1-star reviews that read, politically correct to the point of boredom about the film, SJW propaganda, and I'm frustrated that feminism and diversity have made their way into this film. This has ruined Star Wars for me as well as my kids. Keep liberalism out of it and stop ruining once good things. Pointed out by Martin Dobney of The Telegraph. We also have Matt Atchity, formerly of Rotten Tomatoes, head honcho over there. Now, you know him here, of course, from What the Flick.
Hello.
So have this conversation.
Yeah. So Matt, first of all, when you ran Rotten Tomatoes, this would have stuck out, right? This would have been a strange situation where, because the critics are usually tougher on movies than the audience is, right?
Typically, that's not always the case. Sometimes you'll end up with a movie that the critics like Drive, that the audience doesn't like as much. But that's usually a case of the marketing materials not giving the audience or giving them something to expect that was different than what they delivered. Because Drive, if you remember those trailers, made it look like Fast and Furious, and that movie is slow and serious. But I don't really ever and you know this from when I was still there, I never put much stake in audience scores for a couple of reasons. Not the least of which, you have no idea that anyone is seeing the movie itself. In my mind, there's 3 types of bullshit in the world. There's general run-of-the-mill civilian bullshit. There's what comes out of the White House these days. And then above that is any numeric representation of an audience reaction to a movie, because it's bullshit.
It's just not a scientific poll. People can just go on and actively say, like, I hate this movie because I read that we're supposed to. Yeah. And we'll just do that.
Well, there's some of that. And also in 2014, when Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas movie came out, that got a wonderful 0 on the tomato meter. And he went on Facebook telling his fans to go on the audience score and vote it up. So ultimately, can it be manipulated by somebody's kind of social agenda? Absolutely. And so you've got people on the right who are really upset about representation in the movies, and I think they're lashing out and marking this movie down because it's, hey, let's not, I only want to see white men in my movies.
Yeah, so I guess, so there's 2 different layers here. One layer is the so-called mystery of who voted down the movie and why they did. So I read a really long explanation. Well, it's because some people didn't like the jokes, or some of the fans were disappointed because it didn't follow their theories as much. No, none of that happened. No one downvoted it to this degree because it told too many jokes. No, this is political. This is troll 101. So if you're not familiar with the internet and you're just a movie critic, you might be like, oh, it could have been a couple of different reasons. No, this is exactly what trolls do.
Right, and to the credit of the film itself, it got higher box office returns throughout the weekend. It wasn't one of those things where word of mouth got out and it started tanking. We'll see more next week, but I will go out on a limb here and say that this Star Wars Episode 8 is going to do just fine, and that people by and large will really, really enjoy it.
No, by any other metric, and including the most important one, which is box office results, people love it. It's yet another stupid right-wing thing on the internet where they get way too much attention when they're a minuscule minority. So in reality, there aren't a lot of people like, oh my God, Star Wars had too many minorities and too many women. I just will not go. So that's like 7 alt-right trolls.
Oh my God. So I read this article, first of all, by Martin Dobney. who you look it up. He's a friend of Milo Yiannopoulos. So let's take anything he says in that context, right? Because if you're a friend with Milo, then your point of view is suspect at best. The other issue is, look, like you want to complain about liberalism in Star Wars, look at the first trilogy. The Empire is all exclusively evil white dudes dressed like Nazis, and the rebels are the ones who have like aliens fighting with them. Right?
Are they illegal aliens?
According to that empire, they absolutely are. Lucas has said over and over again, he said in 81 that during a story conference that the emperor was supposed to be Nixon. In a 2005 interview with the Chicago Tribune, he had said that he conceived of the original Star Wars as an allegory for the Vietnam War, in that the rebels are basically the Viet Cong fighting this technologically overwhelming force, and they win. So, you know, you got to look at Lucas coming out in the 70s and the environment, you know, 10 years after the Summer of Love, or a few years after, you know, he's got this liberal sensibility that's against the establishment, and the establishment at that time is that ill-fated Nixon administration that dragged us into Vietnam. And so there's a liberalism baked into Star Wars to begin with. So for somebody to say, oh, there's too much liberalism in it now, I'm sorry, did you not watch any of these other movies?
Yeah, also like the feminist angle, Leia runs the whole, like she's in charge of the resistance. It says on a highly amusing online thread called Is Star Wars The Force Awakens, the previous film, feminist propaganda, one commenter claims Rey does not need to work at anything. She's naturally awesome just by being a woman. The commenter writes before adding, the male support is bumbling and has an episode of acute cowardliness. Like, did you watch the first one? Leia has her stuff together, the boys show up, and she's like, someone's got to save our skins, and then she gets everybody out of the situation. She's the level-headed one. And then the bout of cowardliness, like, they yell at Han for leaving, like taking the money and running, and then he has to have like a change of heart, not to spoil a film from the late 70s, to come back and help the resistance.
Then they rescue him in the third movie. He's the damsel in distress.
Yeah, and by the way, it is not unfair to men. Poe and Finn in this latest movie are incredibly heroic, and so I don't like Finn is black, so I guess that doesn't count. I mean, like we're talking to a bunch of weirdo racists. We're having this conversation, right? And I don't know what Poe is, you know, both in real life, I don't know exactly.
Oscar Isaac, I don't know.
He's Latino.
He's Latino. Okay, well then he's out.
Right.
Okay.
No, but that's what it is. That's what it is. For decades, we've had all these hero stories that are white dudes, almost exclusively, and now we have to see. Oh my God! Now we have to see other representation in our hero stories. Forget it. I can't handle it.
They haven't said. They say it's different, but they don't say what about the difference is bad. They're saying that changing the formula makes it bad, but they were white dudes for no reason, and you could say like now they're mixed races for no, there's no I mean for representation's sake, but it's different. And it's not worse.
It's conservatism in a nutshell, right? Like we want the same thing to be like it was because it worked for us and it made us feel special, and God forbid we have to share that.
And they're just painting by numbers.
That's such a great point by Matt. And the whole evil empire is a fascist evil empire. So if you root for fascism, sorry, there's not going to be a lot of movies that are on your side. You know why? Because they want to sell tickets, and people don't like to root for the evil empire. Okay, sorry, that's not human nature. So, and I guess they fancy themselves the good guys. I don't know how they make that like, oh, racism is awesome. Being racist is good guys. Being against women is good guys.
Those aliens need to know their place.
Yeah, the aliens. I don't know why they weren't pissed. I get Luke Skywalker and Han Solo were white dudes. I guess were they mad at the original Star Wars because of Yoda? What is this green alien doing here? Right?
He's green. What is that, Mother Earth?
Yeah. So get over it, and no one should ever pay any attention to these absolute clowns. Star Wars, by the way, I saw it. It was a great movie, and I didn't like it because it was a liberal plot, right? Where goodness actually wins is not a liberal plot, and if you think it is, there's something wrong with you. Then you're admitting that your side are the bad guys.
Yeah, it's the same, and they all want to write this slippery slope paragraph. The truth is that identity politics is the kryptonite that saps the joy out of all it touches. How long before Harrison Ford comes out as trans Solo? What price of a zero emissions Millennium Falcon will Jabba the Hutt be called out for fat shaming the obese? This is the exact same framing. I did a video a while back about the gay character in Beauty and the Beast. And they were like, wow, long before there's Pinocchio has sex with some gender fluid dwarves. They just want to write, and it's so easy and it's such a lazy argument, and they just want to get people to be like, all right, let me go vote no on Rotten Tomatoes.
We could do 2 hours on just the liberalism in Star Wars and how people are so wrong about the messaging and why they're upset about it. But I know that we are almost out of time.
Yeah, so look, the great irony here is Star Wars didn't do gender identity politics. They just had a black guy and a Latino and a woman in the movie, which is what the world is. There's black people, white people, Latinos, men and women, right? They're the ones doing gender identity politics, exactly to Matt's earlier point, which is, why aren't all the good people white men? Oh, you guys are doing gender identity politics. If you like this video, bless your heart. We got a lot more where that came from. We do a full show every day, Monday through Friday. Come enjoy it ad-free by becoming a member, tytnetwork.com/join.